My name is Michael. I'm a criminologist based in Australia. A lot of my work, I study domestic violence, sexual assault between adults, but also between young people. When we're thinking about, boys and teenage boys and young men, it's really apparent that boys and men are labouring under this incredible stereotype about particularly male sexuality. So what society tells us about men and boys is that we are always horny, right? We always want sex from wherever we can get it, and we're always up for it, right? Always. And that's just not how sexuality works. It's not how male sexuality works, and it's not how female sexuality works. But particularly for teenage boys, that is what is imposed on us. That's often what our parents are telling us about our sexuality. It's often what teachers are telling us. It's what movies are telling us. It's what pornography is telling us. But it's also what our peers are telling us. So this is a really, really high standard to kind of meet, and it's completely unrealistic. There's not even a fun version of sexuality. It's like all of society treats men and boys like sex robots, right? Like we're just running on horny all the time. And that's just not true. It's not the way anything works. But teenage boys can feel a huge amount of pressure to live up to that. And it's actually where we see teenage boys get into a lot of trouble. It's where we see teenage boys engaging in really unethical behaviour with young women in particular. I remember when I was in high school, when I was about 15, a female friend of mine was sexually assaulted at a party by another guy in my grade. He wasn't a friend of mine, but he was fairly predatory about it. So he deliberately got her very drunk. And really, once she was unconscious, he raped her. And it was a couple of days later that she and her friends got together and confronted him and his friends. And you know what his friends said back? They said, well, what do you expect? They said, he's the last one of us to lose his virginity. He just had to lose his virginity, right? So what do you expect? And so this was really interesting because they weren't saying, oh, he was horny, right? He just wanted to get his rocks off. No, he was embarrassed, right? He was humiliated because he felt like all of his friends had had sex and he hadn't. Now, guaranteed all of his friends were lying, right? Guaranteed that wasn't even true. But he was basically anxious and humiliated and insecure. And actually a lot of teenage boys, this is how they feel about their sexuality because they assume all other teenage boys are these sex robots and they're the only one that's not. And there's a lot of pressure. And so that's where we start to see actually teenage boys getting into a lot of trouble. It is this peer dynamic between teenage boys as they kind of egg each other on to kind of perform this version of male sexuality that is just no fun for anyone. It's not fun for boys and men. It's not. That's not good sex. It's not good sex. It's unethical. I mean, that scenario, that's straight out illegal. He should have gone to prison. Yeah, that is rape. And incredibly harmful for girls and women. When I was in my late teens, I had a friend who sort of took me aside to sort of talk to me about this problem, which is that he would be at parties and he'd work so hard to get a young woman into bed, right? So there's these teenage parties. So you would literally, all of his mates would see him go to the bedroom with her. And then once he was in bed, he was like, I can't get it up. Like, I can't get an erection. I don't want this. Because actually the whole thing that he was doing was a performance for his mates. He wanted his mates to know that he could score. But actually, if you're not getting an erection, it's a pretty good sign that that's not the kind of sex that you want to have. It's not the kind of sex he wanted to have. It's your body literally saying, I'm not up for this, right? I'm uncomfortable. And that's actually a really good signal that you probably should be looking for a different sort of sexual experience. But for him, he was like, what's wrong with me? Right? I should want to have drunk, smelly, uncomfortable sex with a total stranger. at a party until 2 in the morning, right? And it's like, what's wrong with me? It's like, there's nothing wrong with you. That sounds like really bad sex, actually. And it's not even the sort of thing that you find like sexual, actually. So this is something that I think we can all do as young men, as adult men, is kind of drop the facade, and be honest with each other, actually about the way that sex and sexuality actually works. And men are not honest with each other. We are really embarrassed about sex and sexuality. Men do not talk openly and honestly about sex with each other in a way that actually girls and women do. Girls and women are much more honest about sex than men and boys are. So our whole vocabulary around sex is often this really misogynist kind of pornographic garbage. It's just garbage. And it doesn't connect with actually what feels good for us, what we actually want, what we're actually looking for, and what's safe. Because the dominant model of male sexuality as being aggressive, instinctual, dominant, and always up for it, it's not safe. It's really dangerous for the people that we engage with sexually. So we just need to drop it and let go of the anxiety and let go of the shame and just be really clear with ourselves and with our partners about what feels good and what we want, and also what they want and what works for them. That's how we learn sexually, and that's how we develop sexually, is learning from our partners about what works for them. That's a healthy male sexuality.